It's still loading. That's going to be on YouTube. So the first thing you'll hear is, it's still loading. You hear it. That's hilarious. So good morning. I'm going to set this down. Good morning. Welcome to, as you see, we've got a new name. We were calling it Talk Tuesday, but Unlikely Conversations is kind of what we've decided on for now. That may change, it may not, who knows? But these are conversations where we are coming in and talking about things that could be hard to talk about, things like addiction, things like mental health issues, different disorders. And we just want to preface this with, this is not a substitute for any kind of medical advice or diagnosis. This is simply us coming together, sharing our past, our tools that we use to work through our own recovery. And we each have very different facets of life that we're working through different things. And so we came together and we realized that this was a topic that needed to be discussed so that people could come out and feel comfortable talking about the hard stuff. So we've dedicated like the whole month of January to addiction, because addiction is really prevalent, and I think everyone suffers from it in some sort of manner. And so I think before we get into that topic, we wanted to do just kind of like a fun little get to know the speakers today, because this is only number 2, so I don't think people really know us that well yet. They might know me if you're on my channel. They might know Genevieve as she builds her social media on Facebook and on her channel. And Sarah, I'm sure people know you because she's very, very good at popping out there live. But we would love to let you get to know us. So I'm going to throw it to Genevieve and let her kind of start us off.
Sure. So this icebreaker, I think, is a really, really neat one. You know, it's very telling, I think, of where people are at and what's meaningful for them. So I'm super curious about if you could relive one day in your life, like what that would be, like what the experience was and why that would be something you'd want to re-experience or relive.
Should I start it off? Yeah, you're like, go ahead. Is it okay if I pick the same one? We did this last time, me and Genevieve. Oh, and this is my dog Harvey, by the way, if you're watching in the video. So if you hear noise, that's what's happening.
So cute.
My mic isn't working today, so it's a little fuzzy. So bear with me. So the day that I told Genevieve, I was like, the day I want to relive is like the emotions were like so high, and it was just such a day of like, just actually it's the day I like, falling in love with Eddie. That was like such a short amount of time. I mean, and we literally dated from June until we were married in October. So it was, but he asked me to marry him in July. So it was a very short, like 1 month of dating him, but yeah, it was that first, he was a customer at the coffee shop and we hung out outside the coffee shop. But he'd come in to ask me if I wanted to, it was funny. He asked me if I wanted to go to Barnes and Noble. And I was like, is Barnes and Noble still around? That like dates me. But I ended up saying, I was like, well, no, I don't really read. Now I do audiobooks, you guys. But I was like, well, you're more than welcome to come with us to Buffalo Wild Wings with me and my friend. And he's like, oh, okay. And so he came and we just like laughed and told stories, like, shared our life in that such a short amount of time. And my friend still jokes. She was like, I was such the third wheel. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, but it was just such a memorable moment in time that like, yeah, I'll just, never forget. And I think just wanting to relive that, like, I think that was such a cool memory that I feel like it's even brought up, with me today, almost 17 years later. So
yeah, wow.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking, I never hear Eddie talk ever. So I'm like, I really would love to get to know more of Eddie, because you're talking about how funny he is. I'm like, I need to know.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll put him on the spot. Babe, tell a joke. He'll love that. Honestly, though, like he is streaming. He talks way more than I do. He's on Twitch.
Follow him.
He's got a podcast called Married to the Games. They're on their 600th episode. They're renting a studio.
Wow.
They're renting a studio in Nashville, and they're packing out the house so people can watch it live. Oh yeah, he's way cooler than I am.
Okay, so I need to know what all his things are. So maybe we can drop that in the bottom of our comments today so people can find him too.
Here's the famous Eddie, if you just want to say hi, babe. Hi. Okay. And he made me coffee. Thanks, babe. Love you. His mom's actually visiting this week, so I'll probably mute myself in between things. But no, so sweet, and yeah. And honestly, if we ever wanted to, have a guest speaker, maybe
that would be so fun.
That'd be really neat.
I'll talk to him about it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I know Eddie just because he's such a, he comes up so much for you and is just such a strong support for you. And so, I'm like, I know him just through you vicariously. And I'd really like to, everything you share about him. I'm like, he's a person I would love to know,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and I think too, like what's really beautiful is that is something that we really should talk about, how having a support system is so important to your mental health. Like that
Yeah.
is beyond, I mean, I don't talk about my husband that often, and only because like there was a part of me that kind of kept away my personal life from social media. I used to like just share everything. So like over contained, or what do they call that? Out of containment. Now I'm like
Yeah,
more I'm contained. So I'm learning my balance, like right? Like as I age, I get better and better at how to share. But yeah, I feel the same way about Eddie. I feel like when you talk about him, and I think what it is we're feeling your love for him, and that's
totally. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Genevieve,
So
do you want to
sweet.
go next?
Oh, sure. So, yeah, Sarah, I'm not going to do the same one.
Oh man, I should have done a different one.
No, it's okay. No, yours was lovely.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Um,
I love yours too. So. But this will be fun.
oh,
I
thanks.
get to hear more layers of
Thank you.
you. So
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Your
wait,
husband.
was that a hug? You got a hug.
That was one of my kiddos.
Those kids.
I
Oh,
was
sweet.
So
yeah.
oh, that's so sweet. No, I seriously was like, okay, wait, should I pick a new one? I was trying to think, brainstorm memories.
It's sometimes hard on the fly. I
It
I just had an opportunity to think of a new one because you were talking and I was
is.
like, am I going to do the same one? Oh no, I'll do this.
Okay, all right.
So, so, so we were in that horrible car accident. My husband was both of us were badly injured, but my husband was very, very badly injured and hospitalized for over 3 months, up in Denver, which is, 6.5 hours away from us, here in Durango. So it's a trek. And because I had broken ribs and a broken sternum, I couldn't travel. And so when I finally got well enough to travel to go see him in the hospital, Nolan and I took this adventure together to go visit his dad. And the day I went, like another day I think would be really lovely to relive is that reunification after so much time apart, like that reunification together as a family, like finally seeing my husband for the first time after 10 weeks of being away from us and hospitalized, and Nolan seeing his dad. It was just so beautiful. And like I just loved watching the beautiful like interaction between my husband JT and Nolan, and Nolan was just so sweet and scared but like really curious too, and like very much like when he saw it started making sense for him. And the cutest thing that came out of that um was that he had been developing this timeline of when daddy was going to be fully better. And when he saw his dad, like it crystallized for him that that might not be the best way to think about this, is like in terms of timeline, like daddy's going to be all better by this time. And so that was a really neat kind of experience, I think, for him to just to get that things are not like that things are not on a timeline. Um, but when I think really the point of that just being that it was a beautiful learning experience, even though it was incredibly challenging, kind of similar to my example from Saturday. Like that there's so much joy that can come out of suffering and challenge. And especially if you do have that love and connection to 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 a family member or partner. And so, yeah, just beautiful. I don't know.
I love
I,
that.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
need that struggle in order to like, see the love, right there. Because
Totally.
you can't,
Yeah.
there's nothing to compare it to if there wasn't a struggle involved at some point. And I think that's the
And
beauty of like a beautiful life is like understanding, the pain and struggle won't always be there because we won't fully embrace like that love and joy that's brought
yeah,
from something so hard. So I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Jenny.
yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Really beautiful. And that's like in my practice, we talk about that. We call it the contrast. And without contrast,
Yeah,
you won't know. You would never know that you were struggling or happy if you didn't have we actually have talked about this where like, what if you only had happiness? You would never
oh yeah,
know. Like you wouldn't have
yes,
the gratitude. And I think gratitude's such a big part of being human that,
yes,
that's why contrast is so important. Just being able to experience gratitude is its own state of being. So I
yes,
love that. As you guys are like sharing yours, the first thought I had when I was like, are there rules? Because what if I could experience a moment and then can I relive it and change it? Like there were
yes,
multiple moments that showed up for me in my life. But what's funny is I didn't think about what Shara said about Eddie. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true because my husband and I had a very like pretty short like engagement, a short time together. Um, and we had a lot of fun. And like, I think that was something that I thought about is going back to being without kids, like enjoying each other before we had kids.
yeah,
And like each of my kids came up for me, like how they came into my life, because I think the first thought I had was the moment that I first held my son and I didn't birth him. There was something so different. Like it actually makes me want to cry. Like I know moms talk about, and I have like adopted children, stepchildren, and I have biological children. So I've experienced all facets of motherhood. But the moment held my first son, he was the first one that came into my life, like as a mother, my mother role. Was a moment like when someone hands you a baby and you've not been pregnant and you have been waiting to be a mom for so long. And at that point, I think I had experienced miscarriage once. So I've had 7 miscarriages, but at that point, I had only experienced one loss. When someone like tells you can have something and then it's taken away and then you're given it back, it's kind of the same experience, Genevieve, right?
yes.
It
Mm-hmm.
was like they handed me this little baby and like all in this moment, there were all these emotions of like, oh my gosh, I'm a mom. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a mom. And
Yes.
oh my gosh, what did I just do? And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a
Yeah.
mom. Like
Yeah.
this crazy swirl of emotions. And then there was like questioning, like, am I a mom? I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And then, like, so going back to that moment, I actually felt it. Like I felt it as we were talking about it. And listening to you guys talk about yours, I felt yours. So this was a really cool icebreaker. But I think for me, probably the biggest thing was meeting all of my children for the first time.
Yes.
And I did have that moment of like, if I think the one thing that I would go back to is like to re-experience my pregnancy through joy. I didn't have a great pregnancy because I had 7 miscarriages. So I lived in anxiety. So I'm like,
Yes.
if I could go back to a day and relive it and change it, I would probably like relive my whole pregnancy or like the birth. But I think every mom has that, right? Like I think a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
women who have given birth, but really it's all of the children, like meeting my husband, meeting my children. So it's really the connection of love. I think we're all like we want to re-experience that new first love, no
Yeah.
matter if it's your soulmate or your child. I mean, it's
Yes.
just really beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, it's funny
Yes.
you mentioned, well, first I had that same conversation with Genevieve where it was, wait, if I could go back, do I really want to change it? Well, no, I don't want to change it. So I had that conversation. And then you mentioned the fact that Genevieve talked about that in the first time we did that icebreaker with, holding Nolan. And, I just thought that was so cool that you,
interesting. So
Yeah.
so interesting because everybody's kind of having the same like want, but also the same
Yes.
like I wouldn't want to redo it, right? Like I thought about yes, I would love that, but I also there's so many things that came out of that
Yes.
experience that I wouldn't want to
Yes.
change. So it's like, oh, maybe I wouldn't want to change it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it is really neat that you're like holding my son for the first time because that was my thing I wanted to relive.
Oh, cool.
And I think that in what is very similar in all these experiences too is that there was challenge and struggle before there was that outpouring of love and joy. Like, you know, in for Sarah's example with Eddie, like she had just gone through a pretty nasty breakup and,
Yeah. I
and
didn't.
then love came out of that, right? And
Oh, for
um,
sure. Yeah. And for
so
him
it's
too, I think like we both had very similar stories
yeah.
to,
Yeah, I think that there's something beautiful about us all acknowledging that a lot of the moments we want to relive were accompanied with struggle, and that's the human experience,
Yeah.
you know?
So that's a perfect lead in. Like you guys couldn't
It
have
is.
perfectly too. So I was telling Genevieve before you got on, we're reading Daring Greatly in Sarah's group. So we can talk more about the groups and stuff, but we're reading Daring Greatly. And this morning because I was reading it, trying to catch up because I haven't been live with all of you. And so addiction, right, is our month of January is addiction. And
Yes.
she's talking about this. So like I want to read the couple of paragraphs quickly, but I think it's important that we kind of preface what it is. So she
Yeah.
calls it the shield. Have you guys gotten to that part? Numbing the shield. See, I
Have
think
you gotten to numbing yet, Sarah?
I don't think we have yet. Not yet.
okay. Well,
It's up to
it's
chapter three.
coming.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're in what part?
Oh, chapter three, I
Chapter
think,
three.
or at
And
least the part three. It's so
this is
different on
chapter four.
Audible. Oh,
This
it's
is.
four. Oh, okay. Yep.
I was trying to catch up. I thought you guys were further ahead than what I thought. So
Oh,
apparently,
no worries. No,
I
no, I like it. I'm gonna get a sneak peek. So yeah.
Yes.
okay,
No, this is great.
so it says the shield numbing. If you're wondering if this section is about addiction and you're thinking this isn't for me, please read on. This is about all of us. First, one of the most universal numbing strategies is what I call crazy busy. So she will go through and talk about all the different types of numbing.
Yeah.
I often say that when they start having 12-step meetings for busyaholics, they'll need to rent out football stadiums. We are a culture of people who've bought into the idea that if we stay busy enough, the truth of our lives won't catch up with us. Second, statistics dictate that there are very few people who haven't been affected by addiction. I believe we all numb our feelings. We may do it compulsively and chronically, which is addiction, but that doesn't mean that we don't numb our sense of vulnerability. And numbing vulnerability is especially debilitating because it doesn't just deaden the pain of our difficult experiences. Numbing vulnerability also dulls our experiences of love, joy, belonging, creativity, and empathy. We can't selectively numb emotion. Numb the dark and you numb the light. And I thought this was so, so good, so powerful because that I think is something that doesn't get talked about in addiction. And that was actually why I quit drinking. Like I realized I had become so numb. I wasn't even experiencing joy. I was just there. I was just numb to the world and blah. So I think this chapter is so powerful for people to realize that if you're numbing, and even if you think, oh, I'm just doing it occasionally, just know this, that when you do it, you're lacking in your whole experience of emotion.
That makes so much sense though.
Yeah, it limits the range and scope of the emotional experience.
Yeah.
Um, or, so it can deaden that or limit it, or I think certain behaviors can amplify only one aspect of it, and then you you don't have the full and complete experience either. And so I think it's really important to remember that, you know, um, well, I think that there are two things. I think there is a drive, like you said, there's a drive to not experience certain things. There's a human drive not to experience certain things. And there's a human need to have the full and complete experience. And so those run, it feels like they're in opposition, but I actually think this is an example of a dialectic that both can be true at the same time, you know?
Yeah. I think when you mentioned also, there can't be light without dark. Um,
Yes.
yeah. we had just finished the part where she talks about with Harry Potter, that scene where Sirius
Yes.
Black and Harry Potter talk, and he was like, well, I have these thoughts, and he's like, Harry, everybody has these thoughts. He's like,
Yes.
always going to be light and dark. It's just what you choose to act on that's the
Yeah.
most important part. And I was like, oh,
Totally.
so good. And I'm so glad she mentions Harry Potter because I'm like,
Too.
there's so many life lessons in those stories, and I'm like, what a beautiful, turn of events where
Yes.
you see the human struggle, and it's like, wow, that's so relatable to everybody on this
Yes.
planet. And it's like, okay,
Yes.
it's okay to normalize having these struggles and talking about addiction,
Yes.
and it's like, wow, this is going to be so impactful, and I feel like I don't know, it's kind of turning it into something that I look forward to, like just
Yeah.
with you guys, and I learned so much because I feel like I'm more open to personal development, but then it's nice to be able to bounce ideas back and kind of hear in other people's words, like some of my own thoughts. And it's like, oh,
Absolutely.
put it so much more eloquently. and Cassie will like dissect it in 5 different ways. I'm like,
Totally.
I love it. So yeah, thank
It's
you.
so funny too how we all have different personalities of like of breaking the information down, and I love that. And I think that's why this group is so powerful, because we each are going to touch people who are going to hear our words differently. So I love that we each have a different way of explaining it. And I also love that we're also like free and open to be able to like, oh yeah, this is
Yes.
how I saw it, or this is how I saw it. And Sarah, I'm glad you brought up the Harry Potter thing, because I was like, what it was funny to me when because so for those of you that don't know, Brene Brown actually reads her book on Audible, so it's nice you actually hear her voice, and it's pretty cool to hear her like talk, because she kind of has that, the tone, it helps. But when she was talking about, the guy was like, "Do you watch Harry Potter?" Like you could hear her hesitancy of like wanting to not tell him she watched Harry Potter. Like, why is he asking me?
Yeah.
So just those little things in the book that I love about her. She just brings like this she allows you to be vulnerable because she's vulnerable.
Yeah.
In dance fitness, Sarah, I don't know if you experience this or not, but so you guys probably have never taken a class with me, but people who take my class or who have been in a class with me, even if I'm not teaching, I am my most vulnerable, goofy, authentic self. Like I will do the craziest things. But what I've realized is by doing that, I'm giving people permission to do the same thing.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So
Yes.
I think it's so beautiful that we're doing this here, because we're giving people permission to be vulnerable and talk about these things. So it may
Yeah.
not be here with us, but they may start a conversation in their living room and like, or with a friend, and it could lead to some beautiful healing path. Who knows?
Mhm. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like the more authentic you can be, it gives like permission to other people to be open as well.
Totally.
And I think that's the thing, like
Totally.
to be around a group that's of growth and open-mindedness and support. I think it's so, so needed in order for us to just, move
Yeah.
forward, be
I was
comfortable
going to
who we
say,
are. Yeah, I love
as
it.
Batman runs across the back room and at background, and he's like pretty consistently poops on lives. And Sarah's like, man, oh no, like
I
that's
know.
probably the most vulnerable moment.
Yeah, I know. And I know. I actually said, Batman, we talked about this. Somebody was like, I
Batman
can't
has
believe you said that.
no.
I was like, well, literally, we just talked about it. So that's why I said that. Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
Batman, you are so loved. Everybody just
You
loves
are.
He's so
Yeah. He's like a celebrity in and of himself.
he is.
Um,
He
yeah,
totally.
I mean, I think it's really, really important to acknowge that, that there's a disconnect too about whether it's like whether being vulnerable, like in our society, there's sometimes a perception that vulnerability or just authenticity um is um is weakness. I mean, not authenticity, but you know what I mean? Like that
you.
there's some sort of value judgment about that like the person that feels and is vulnerable and shows themselves and wears their heart on their sleeve is somehow weak. And what I love about Brene Brown is that she's actually saying, no, that's when you're most strong.
Mhm.
That's when you're most empowered. That's when you're most you. Um, like the breadth of who you are shows most when you can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the challenge in society is that we're terrified of that. for different reasons. And so we can find ourselves numbing, even if it's just, like I love the joke about the 12-step, process for
Canadians.
busy people. What is it? Like what is
Busyaholics. Yeah, renting out football
busyaholics? Yeah.
stadiums, busyaholics. I
Because
actually think
it's
like
like, we're constantly occupying our time with work or technology or social media um or substances or exercise or like a busy and and it is very important to create space just to have your experience
yeah.
without just being itinerized and on the go and not like really just being in the moment. I think it's interesting because I think there's an element of um like slowing down and getting mindful also I think can bring out and facilitate that vulnerability that allows us to be reflective and have that full experience. I don't know, it's just really cool.
Yeah,
I
I
think,
think that that's a good lead into giving our tips on
Yeah.
how do we recognize first of all the numbing, right? If you're
Mhm.
first, I think that's the number one step. Like for me, I didn't become aware of it until I started reading about it. Like that's I think why I love to read is I didn't know because I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't I mean I feel like I've done enough of my therapy that like by now I should know. And I probably, today is different from 2 years ago, being that I've
Yes.
been sober for 2 years. But I think the number one tool that I would say to help realize that you're numbing is to have a support system, like we were talking about in the beginning, someone who can really
Yes.
be honest with you and say, listen, like, I don't know if you noticed this or not. Like, I have someone like that in my life that's not in my house, but we talk once a
Mhm.
week. And it's not my counselor, it's not my therapist, but we talk once a week. And she's like, hey, she'll give me that, like, hey, I think that you may have become addicted to this problem. Like there's a specific problem in my life that like I keep bringing up when we're like in, and she's like, I wonder if maybe you could like kind of break it down and find out what it is that you're avoiding. And I was like, I'm not avoiding anything. And like so we started talking about it and I was like, oh, I'm avoiding my own. And that's usually how I recognize it. I
Yeah.
see it in people first. And then I'm trying to avoid looking at my own stuff. So I'm like, oh, can you believe that this is happening over here? And like, this is happening like every day. Like, I focus in on it. And then I'm like, oh, I'm focused on it because I see that in my life and I'm uncomfortable with it.
Mhm.
So, like, that's probably the number one tool I have is have someone in your life, whether it be a
Yes.
therapist, a friend that's really close to you, a loved, maybe not someone who lives in your home. I think it can become really muddied when you have someone who's telling you those things that lives with you. Um, or even like a coach or a mentor of some sort, like just getting together with someone on occasion to like throw some things out there and say like, hey, I've been struggling with this, or they'll notice things by when you start talking.
yeah,
Totally.
I think,
Yeah.
with the whole busyness thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could definitely see my addiction to busyness at different aspects, different times of my life. And one
Yes.
time it was, well, October of 2017. Here we go. And I was just Facebook. I don't know if it's still the same. It doesn't show up anymore, but Facebook messages, if it was over 100 messages, it would say 99 plus unread messages. Now they don't have that on there because people probably lost their minds like I did. And so I was like, so I would just continually just try to get those messages down. Well, just because I work on social media, so I had done that since 2014. So it builds up. And so every, morning, noon, and then at night after my classes, I would come back and I'm like, okay, let me just get it down to 98 because then I would
Yeah.
know if I was under 100. And I was like, I could actually feel like pressure on my heart of this like anxiety. And I'm like, I'm either having a heart attack or a panic
Mhm.
attack or something's happening. And I was like, this is not worth it. And like, I just turned off my computer and I decided I'm never going to answer every message again in my life. And I have to accept this. And it was so freeing too. And it wasn't, so that happened then. And I was still like, I still had a Facebook streak for 3 years of posting one photo or one video or whatever per day. And it was then that following January 2018, I went on the first dance fitness cruise, and I got the internet package so I could still post. And we didn't have internet like 2 of the days because they're just like, sorry,
Yeah.
you paid for the internet package, but it doesn't always work. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, Sarah, like, why are you freaking out? Like, I had put so much of an importance on, being on
Yes.
media or answering messages. And I'm like, I mean, in the moment you think I'm not doing a good job. And,
Yes.
and it's that busyness, right? And it's like, oh, I can check mark it off and that makes me a good
Yeah.
person, right? Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's almost like I was looking for that validation when it wasn't a positive thing, And so I
Yes.
had to like let it go, turn off notifications, stop with the messages. I was like, if people need to get back to me, like, I'll apologize for not getting back to them. It'll be fine. And if
Yeah.
people are mad at me, like, I don't want to work with them anyway. So I just really had to have this conversation with myself, like, it's okay to unplug and it's so needed. And I know even with, even at home, like, I think Eddie was just like, oh, you're working again, and it wasn't until also The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. That's an awesome audiobook. Eddie and I listened to that in the car. He likes personal development too. He told me about that book. So we listened to it. And she had said yes only to the most important things. And like if a kid was like, Mom, can we play? And she's like, she would always be like, no, I'm really busy. I mean, here she's writing Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. She's a busy lady. And so, but then she decided to like, no, or she was like, yes, I can play with you, and she would like set a timer and let them know, like, you have 20 minutes. What do you want to do? And so she would, have these boundaries, but at the same time, like understand, like, I need to be present to this. This is important. This is my child, or this is my spouse, or this is my best friend. Like living in the moment. And she said yes to, and she turned down the things that were just like people pleasing, the negative. Sorry, let's
Yes.
jump. But anyway, it was just so that book too really helped me to slow down, be more present, stop letting busyness be my addiction. I just want to put
Yes.
that there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I memorized that book pretty well. I'm like, okay, this is the year of yes for me because I heard myself in just your summarization of the book. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
It's such a good book. No, really, it definitely helps. I think I might even do that one again. Well,
yeah, it's really good.
yes, maybe next January. Yeah.
You're doing 12 books this year, right?
Oh
Or 12,
yeah, that's my goal. Yep, to do it in the group and have like a 12,
yeah.
12 books over the course
So
of.
if anybody wants to join, we have book club as well. So, and we get together
Yes.
on Saturdays where you guys actually can get on Zoom with us and talk to us and have like a whole conversation. So as you get to know us, you'll start to realize like we have so much fun. Like that's what we're all about. We're all about fun.
Sure do.
I know we
It's
do.
all it's all about fun, and it's all about it's all about I feel like opportunities to connect and feel connected and to have a community, just feel community, which I think is really important. And so, I think that connects to, kind of sort of Cassie's strategy is making sure that you have a community that honors and knows who you are and can be reflective to you when maybe you are not able to have that reflection or insight, and being able to really receive that information from that community is really critical. And I think too, like there are opportunities where I think we do get like we push comes to shove, like your dance cruise situation where it was like the internet was just not an option, and you were
Yeah.
like, oh, I really have to look at this behavior because I'm freaking out about not having internet for 2 days because I need to keep this streak and I need to post every day. And that is really maybe not healthy.
Oh,
So there, so
definitely.
so I think so when you're given that opportunity to
Mhm.
be reflective on a behavior, I think it's really important to be reflective. And a lot of that comes out of I think starting to practice mindfulness or attunement to oneself. And so
Mhm.
these no matter what, whether you're in the throes of addiction or you are doing okay right now, it's critical to give yourself opportunities to check in. Like, where am I at? What is happening right now? Why am I feeling this drive to go like eat a Whopper? Like, did I just have a kind of a nasty session with a client? And I'm like, pardon my language, I am gonna drop an F-bomb. And I'm like, fuck it. Fuck it. I'm rewarding myself with a Whopper. Like, and being able to be I'm telling you, I had that urge yesterday. We're doing our 3 right now.
Mhm.
Um,
So,
but so just like being able to take those, like notice those moments, like, oh, yeah, if I'm having this attitude about something where it's like, you know, I'm going to do something that I know is not going to make me feel good later, but fuck it, I'm going to do it right now because I deserve it. Like, I think that's an important attitude to be aware of. I know that's the one that gets me in trouble the most.
Me too.
Sorry.
those
That
chicken whoppers.
I call it the inner saboteur, because that's the one that
Exactly.
like
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
And like we have arguments like full on. You would probably, if you could be inside my mind in those moments of like, you don't need chocolate. Chocolate is not a necessity. Oh, but chocolate has magnesium and it's really good for health. You could probably, I'm like, no, like it's funny because I can actually talk myself into and out of things. So I've had to
Yes.
recognize the smarty pants in his inner critic, because she's,
Mhm.
Oh, absolutely.
I know how to
Yeah.
convince her how to do it.
Yeah. No,
Yes.
it's so
And
funny. Or the gremlins with, yeah.
it's so easy to justify a behavior. It is so easy to justify a behavior. And so I think it's really important if we're justifying behavior, looking at, again, I think going back to looking at how does this behavior serve me, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So
and there are times when it's okay to say fuck it and have a Whopper too.
Yeah.
And recognize, I think the line is like, okay, I said fuck it. I'm gonna have a Whopper. Does that mean that I have a Whopper every day this week? No. Right?
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, I know. I
Yeah.
think it's like understanding, yeah, having that conversation with yourself, like it's gonna be okay, you know. Like I think
I'm gonna be okay.
it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's gonna be all right. Like yeah, maybe that will help me in the moment, and maybe that's worth it, you know. Like I think that's
exactly.
the way to justify that, and I feel like even trying to be perfect all the time. Like I wanted to touch on
Oh
that,
yeah.
like the whole like, and some people thrive on 75 hard. I think like I have an addictive personality where I actually need to avoid perfection challenges
Yes, I
where
agree.
where it's so hard that I'm so hard on myself that I'm like, who am I? I don't like who I am when I'm trying to be this perfect. So
Yeah,
I do. I avoid those things because, you know, I mean, some people think like I won't be perfect until I do something like that. And I'm like, but if that's your goal, like you're going to be let down in life. Like if you're
totally.
trying to
Yes.
find that balance of listening to your needs when you need it. And sometimes, well, no, every weekend I'm like, no, I'm not going to move Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to try to limit myself to
Yes.
1,000 steps a day. Like, thank you very much. You know, so
We can, I was like,
Yes. And I think sometimes choosing to do a thing, I mean, it I think it is honestly really, I think it's really important to check in with yourself about what supports you in showing up every day. Like what is it that supports you in showing up every day and allows you to show up meaningfully and with attunement. And like it is so difficult because I think we get these societal pressures from every angle to be or do or act or behave in a certain way, and we do have to I think we can get addicted to that, and that can be really really challenging. But I think that, again, going back to like, this is all on a spectrum, and really it is just about like, I think what we're here trying to do is allow people to understand that falling on this spectrum is just natural and normal. It's okay. And if we can talk about it, then I think that we can keep some of those behaviors that may not serve us very well in check. We're still probably going to engage in those behaviors sometimes, but we can keep them in check. And for you, Sarah, you were an obsessive exerciser. And so it's really critical for you to make sure that you intentionally build in that time to rest.
mhm.
You
Oh, yeah.
need that,
Mhm. Oh,
you know?
yeah, definitely. And I think like that, so certain addictions can become like they can feed each other too. And
Totally.
I think like
Yes.
even with that, because I had emotional and binge eating as well. So it was almost
Yes.
I ate bad, so I need to work out 4 hours tomorrow, you know? And it was like this imbalance of like, you know, trying to control too many things. And that's like, that's what addiction does. Like you think like, well, if you just do these things, you'll be back in control. And it's like,
Yes.
it's so the
All about
opposite of what understanding that addiction really is, right? It's like
Yeah.
coming to terms with, wow, this is something that does have control over me, instead of me thinking I have control over it. And it's
Correct.
like,
Yes.
okay, I just need to have set of boundaries put in place, have the support, like Cassie said, be able to understand like how you're feeling. Like, I mean, I was a nail biter, I had rashes on my arms from anxiety. Like there was like things that your body tells you, and that's
Yes.
what you should pay attention to, I think is
Yes.
the
Yes.
first sign. Maybe, just understanding like how you're feeling
Yes.
emotionally, physically, because sometimes you don't think it's a problem and then you realize like, wow, why did I lash out, or why do I have this rash,
Totally.
or why am I feeling this way? And it's okay to ask
Yeah.
those questions, and to become more self-aware is going to help lead you down the path of the answers, because now you're actually starting to gain back control. So yeah.
And I
That's,
love that
yeah,
you brought up control, because that's number one. I think that people don't realize that addiction is all about control.
it
And
really is.
woman tell her story once about how her control issue was around her son. And she said what she realized is like by the time she got into her 40s, she was like, one day she was trying to tell her son what to do, and he was in his 20s, and he was like, Mom, I don't need you to tell me what to do. And she was like,
Right.
trying to control the situation. And she's like, it occurred to me, I was telling myself all this time that I was trying to control my son to make him safe. But she said it actually didn't have anything to do. I mean, it did a little bit, that him being safe, but it had more to do with her anxiety. She was appeasing her anxiety for herself by keeping
Hmm.
her son locked in a little box. And
Yeah.
he was a risk taker. He was an adventurer, and she was trying to like change who he was to appease her anxiety. And that, I think, is really why we all numb, is because of anxiety, because of depression. We're either so low we're trying to feel something, or we're so high on, energy of anxiousness that we're just trying to like come back to a normal level. And there are other ways to get to those places, right? Like things like meditation and breath work. um
Mhm.
the emotion code, I think, too, for me, has been a game changer, to be able to allow
Yeah.
myself to release body trauma. um, Somatic therapy. I mean, there's so many different modalities that people can use to get
Yes.
themselves to a place of ease and flow. And occasionally, you're going to have people who just they need to medicate with a doctor and with a professional's help, that you
Yep.
may need to have for a little bit of support. I mean, I was on antidepressants when I
Yes.
got afterwards, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. Sometimes you have to get yourself
Yes.
chemically balanced, and then you can do the work. Like
Yes.
you work from a place of stress.
Yeah. 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 I agree 100%. And I think that it's just really important that if you're noticing that there are challenges, that you let somebody know that you're interested in seeking some support and get some guidance. And um I want to spend some time next week on resources for like places you can reach out to for addiction, so that we provide some of those resources to people as places that they can go. Um, but
Please
it's
reach
really
out
important.
to us too. That I want to put that out there, that we are all open.
Yes,
And I know
exactly.
Sarah's like, don't reach out to me. I don't know where to send you. Like I could just hear that from it. Like I know she has places, obviously, but I think
I just
that
start with book club. I'm like, just come hang out with us in
right.
our
I know, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like,
yeah.
just come hang out with us. No, I think if you want to reach out to any of us, we all will
Yes.
have, because the one thing that I know about each of us is if we don't know, we will help you find the answer.
We'll
So
find it out.
please don't like
Yeah.
not say something, or don't feel embarrassed. This is not an embarrassing topic. It might feel that way
No.
at first because shame has you in its grips, right? So like
Yeah.
join us on this book, because Brene Brown
Yes.
is phenomenal talking about vulnerability and shame and what the difference is between
Yeah.
guilt and shame. I think it's really important to understand like why we have addiction and why we experience this to numb. And that's part of the reason we all want to do these book clubs and come together,
Yes.
because we want to understand what we're doing and why, and how we can get better and be happier and live a more
Yes.
fulfilling life. So
Yes. Yeah. 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 No, and yeah, this was a great conversation today. And of course, then we went long again,
get better
which
at
is
this, guys. This is only week 2.
we're week 2 and we're working it out and we're working out the timing, but I do have to get going so I can get my little
Yep.
boy ready for school. Um, I'm so looking forward to next week. Yay.
Me
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, ladies.
So we'll be bringing resources. Look forward to that. Check in. And actually, if you reach out to us beforehand and get us your questions or comments, we will
Yeah,
address it live. So please don't hesitate to drop it in the comments, or
yeah,
to message us. Follow us on Instagram, social media. Like, we have all the things in below in the description, so you can find where we're at. But we're so grateful if you came here and listened, and we would love to hear from you, hear your comments, your thoughts. If you made it to the end, I want to see that you like made it to the end. Say it. Like, get out there and say,
yeah.
put a big heart to show us that you've joined us and you've enjoyed yourself.
All right, we can have a code at the very end, like it's a heart this week. Maybe it'll be a pineapple emoji next week.
Love it.
Love it.
A rainbow. Yeah.
Yes,
I
I love
love that. Great idea.
Yeah.
it. Cool.
Thanks.
So fun. Thanks,
Thank you guys
everyone.
so much for joining us, and we'll